nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hey, roll call. Director Coleman.
Here.
Director Morgan.
Here.
Director Barney is here. Is Director Valentine here? Don't believe so. Doesn't sound like. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Coleman.
And do I hear a second?
I second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. On to the budget workshop.
Okay, I'll try to make this as painless as possible. Just wanted to spend the time as we did last year, just kind of go over some of the high level items that we're bringing back to the budget at next meeting, which is next week on Tuesday.
Everything all right? Aha, yes,
Yep.
that helps a lot. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yep.
man.
I always forget it does that. What I'll go through is just, these are the capital items. So these are the items that are more than $5,000 for one given project. So they become our fixed assets once they're done and put into our budget. I'll show the overall operating budget as well, but this is where the bulk of any of the reserves or anything, any big projects that we're going to do here at the airport, that it's earmarked. So if you have any questions, let me know. If myself, Tim, or Todd can't answer, we can call on staff. They're all readily available. I had some things going on today, so they're not here in the meeting. And if there's anything specific you have questions on, there's some things on the infrastructure side. We're going to be working on the water systems hydraulic modeling, replacing pump 6 in our pump house. This year we did the first 5 pumps, but then this is a complete remodel that's inside the pump house.
Okay, so is pump 6 special compared to the other 5?
Yes, the pump 6 is a diesel. So that's what that kind of is, our backup pump, whereas if the others were to fail, that would...
Sorry, pump 6 is an electric. The other 5 are diesel.
Okay.
Okay, so
Kind
the
of reversed, yeah.
But
It's a backup plan, yeah. See, their staff, they're listening in.
And so the water system hydraulic modeling, though, when we say modeling, is that something physical or is that like a simulation?
What that project is, that is the plan. That's the project that will lay out the plan for addressing the utility lines and a priority going forward.
So
Deluge or water utility lines.
Yeah,
The water utility, the water that you drink, and that water line.
is it a redesign? Is it hardware? Is it
So some of our
engineering?
water lines are over 70 years old.
Mhm.
We don't know which ones are and which ones aren't. We know some of them are. We've had a significant number of water leaks, water main leaks over the last year. And one of the things we need to do is identify what needs to be replaced when.
So is the 100,000 that I see here, is that going to be spent for coming up with a plan, coming up with engineering data, sorting out which pipe is which?
Plan and data.
Okay.
yeah. So then that way, probably next year when we go to do the budget, we'll have something in place to start to identify which lines we should replace. Because right now, we've kind of, as things break, we're trying to fix them, as we go. So this way we can identify issues in the system.
A little less
Prior to
painful.
some, yeah.
Yeah, a little less painful to
Yeah,
recover.
the water breaks
Yeah.
on Friday evening are not any fun for maintenance.
Question, GA Hangars site prep. That's kind of the new area to the south of the
Yes,
area.
sir.
And what kind of prep are we talking for that?
That'll be, maybe it's easier to say, it's everything except the actual paving.
Okay, so the infrastructure, water, electricity,
Yes.
and it's kind of level enough as it is?
It'll have a civil component to it.
Okay,
too.
so you'll level it off for the hangars.
Right.
And then the pavement improvement 19, that kind of fixing cracks in that or anything beyond that? Or 19?
Oh, yeah, the
Gee.
Oh, line 19, okay, yeah,
That's the existing pavement.
yes, it
Okay.
is. So what we're doing, okay, so with the latest repairs that we've made,
Right.
it appears at this point they're holding up
I
pretty
agree.
well.
They are.
We'd like to give them till August.
Mm-hmm.
If in internal conversation, myself, maintenance, Tim, we've said, let's see what happens by August.
Yeah, hottest time.
And what
of
we're
year.
doing is, we're doing this in 160-foot increment, 160-foot repair increments.
Okay.
And the next one will probably start in July, is what we said this morning. That'll be the next one.
Okay.
And we'll continue to keep an eye on it. And we'll continue making those improvements. And unless we start seeing a failure, then we'll take a different look at it.
Okay. How's the future look for after the hangars site prep? What's beyond that for building hangars? What's kind of the latest on that?
So what we did was I
Okay.
received
Okay.
I had a conversation, received notification from Mr. Keats with the Rectitude, actually this morning,
Okay.
and Mr. Brian Cawthorn, who's a developer.
Okay.
We're working with them. The amount that we will have to pay as it relates to the construction of the new hangars is yet to be determined.
Okay.
Of course, the less, the better.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the less we invest in it,
Mm-hmm.
the less we're going to get out of it as well. And personally, from my perspective, this is just Todd talking now.
Yeah.
I would prefer to do whatever's necessary to get the hangar down there. What if that means we invest $1 million in it?
Okay. What do you see the timeline for? Okay, we're all prepped. Let's start building hangars. What do you see that as a time?
Probably sometime between November and December.
Okay.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Of course.
Can we try and go in order on the questions? I realize that ones will come up and you have to go back and forth, but Chuck, I also have questions about 18 and 19, but I was going to ask one about one.
Okay.
And I just, I'm going to lose my train of thought if we get too far ahead. Can we work our way down the list?
I don't feel that's ahead. The questions have been asked, but
Well, just,
if that's the
if we're
procedure,
done, I'm just,
please
it's a
inform me
suggestion. We
that
don't
that's
have
the
to be
procedure. If that's
I'm
the way to do it.
asking if we can do that. We don't have to. If you don't agree, you don't agree. It
Answer
just
my
seems-
questions.
I just, I'm assuming Carrie's going to kind of explain some of these as we go. and
Yeah, that's why I
In order,
just kind of
and
go
we
through.
can ask questions about them as we go. Doesn't mean we can't skip back. And just prefer not to go to the last one on the list when we have questions about the first.
So let's talk about those
Yep,
chappies.
so the next one is the PAPI upgrade for runway 12.
Well, I had a question about one.
Okay,
That's
that's a,
Go
line
for it,
item
Bob. Go
7,
for it,
Brandon.
Bob. What
That's
you
why
got
I
for
was-
one?
I was
What
going
you
to wait
got?
till Chuck was done, but I was like, oh my gosh, we're so far down the. I mean, I'm going to have questions about those down there too. But, okay, I mean, Floyd would be the right person to ask this, right? So, hydraulic modeling does not include hardware. So this is like we contract this to do studies.
Right. And engineering.
Do they have? They have. I mean,
Do they have the capabilities of doing this?
well, I guess what I'm saying is that it's going to be based on them just doing an audit of how old things are, basically, from old drawings.
It'll be the scope is much deeper than that. Okay.
100,000 apparently. I'm just trying to get a feel for it.
Okay, so what they will do is they will take a look at age will be a
Right.
question, will be a criteria. Look at the condition. They'll look at the depth. So in some cases, you've got lines on top of lines here.
Yeah.
That will be an issue as well. There's other criteria involved in it. How does it work? How will a new water system work with our SCADA system, which is an electronic system that tells us where there's breaks, if what the pressure is coming from the pump house, things of that nature. There's a lot of pieces involved in it.
Yeah. So that includes the big deluge that.
This will include an evaluation of that water line. This
Yeah.
will not include an evaluation of fire suppression systems in the hangars.
Okay.
And to my understanding, it's like it's not going to fix our problem. It's going to get us on a right path to try to resolve some of the issues.
Well, I get it's only a study.
Yeah,
right?
a study, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what we have to know. We have to know where do we start. We've got a lot of water line out here. So where do you begin with making the necessary modifications and improvements or repairs?
Okay.
Yeah. And some of it comes when it's connected a little bit to the pump house. When the pump house goes off, typically we end up with a water break somewhere just because of
The surge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like we just never know. It's
Okay.
like an Easter egg hunt once the pumps go off.
We
And
found one
see
this weekend.
what happens. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And I made a note. I'll have Floyd too. He could brief a little bit more in his next report that he does, just a little bit of kind of what his plan is with that project.
I'd like to hear about
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
The PAPI upgrade on runway 12, compass rose calibration.
Sorry for the pappies. I know you're trying to make this
Oh, no.
painless.
No,
We're gonna
that's
have
okay. No,
questions on every
you can ask-
single one.
No, totally. Feel free to ask questions. That's why I start with this rather than the operating budget, because this actually has some questions.
So for the PAPI upgrade for runway 12, is this going to solve our issue where they're not quite in order?
So one of the issues that we have right now is that one of the PAPI boxes, for example, when they're calibrated, there's a calibration point, a plate inside of it, a placard. It's so old it fell off, and so we have problems trying to adjust that.
Okay.
That's just one box. It's not the rest of the boxes. They're dated. They're harder to maintain. That's one of the reasons why we're having problems calibrating it. So the goal is to replace them all with LED because you can't have interchangeably like one box LED, one box incandescent. So the goal is to go ahead and replace them because they're so worn. They're hard to calibrate now.
Okay, so it'll be a lot easier to line them up properly then.
It should be a whiz.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic.
More
It's been
technology
played-
for Jason.
Well, it's just one of those like we've been struggling with for the last 5 years, and it's a PAPI. It'd be nice for this to just work. So I'm glad to see it in there.
Yes. It's on the upcoming. The compass rose calibration. Seal coating Airport Boulevard, as you know, like that's just kind of, it's been several years and even like all the paint is worn off. So we're going to reseal that. Building 182, the utility panel replacement. 182 is the vault.
The compass rose calibration is a calibration or a resurfacing project?
Initially,
misunderstood?
it'll be a calibration that's followed up by the paving project.
Calibrate just meaning they'll, when they repaint the marks, it'll be based
Yeah.
on
Right.
the measurements. Okay.
So that's the whole project,
Okay.
like the paving and the calibration.
I guess, yeah.
But to your
Yeah.
point, and Bob brings up a good point. The first step in that will be going out to find out where those lines should be painted.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think that they've changed over the years then? Because they do. You know,
Yes.
it used to be runway 25 here.
Tom,
Yeah.
the first person to really bring it to my attention was Tom Lowe.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then I was talking to the folks with Scale, and they also indicated it was off significantly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for the building 182.
Yep. So 182, that is our vault that runs all of the airfield lighting. So this is doing some the utility panel, updating it. We just recently are doing some work on it. We are putting in a backup generator that we received a grant from California for half of it this last year. So this is just kind of improving the airfield lighting vault to make sure it's going to be operational for anything that may happen. Between Jason and Chris, they're making some changes just to some of the gates, is the next 3 items. So gates that they're relocating and to make them fully operational.
Relocating?
Not really. Well, so the one by Straddle Launch is going to be moved further down the road. I think it's at 1,500 feet. The gate over by the boneyard, right now that gate is a mechanical gate, and we're going to make it an access control gate. The other gate, I'm trying to think.
Is there already like infrastructure to make that an access control gate? Like this isn't going to involve anything wireless, is it?
No, I think it's all already hardwired out there.
Both of these gates are currently access control. The 52 and 60 are access control gates. They just need to be updated. A lot of them are a single gate access for entry and exit. We're going to put 2 physical gates in, for one for entry, one for exit. The one at 47, there's no infrastructure, but it connects the test site area to the AOA, so we need to put a automated gate there to allow access between those 2 locations.
Okay, so 47 is the one that's way out by the boneyard. Is that correct? Disembodied voice of Jason?
Yeah, so 47 is between the boneyard and the test sites. 52 is the north perimeter road, and 60 is the south perimeter road.
All right, thank you.
The 4 additional solar lights, we actually already have the solar lights. This would be just putting the infrastructure in for those lights, just to add more lighting on Airport Boulevard. If you're over here after dark, it is kind of dark in some areas down that street. And then adding new fuel lines at the pump house. And then we're to the GA hangar site prep, which Todd kind of briefed, and then the GA pavement improvement. Bob, did you say you had additional questions on those 2? Or?
Yeah, I think Todd answered most of it.
Okay. On property investment, this includes any new property that we're purchasing or any hangars that may come up. Right now, the only hangar that we actually have under contract that we'll be purchasing this year is the Pontius hangar.
Oh, that's fun.
So let me.
I'm a rage.
Well, Kern County currently has 6 outages with 57 customers affected.
You want where you want.
Just
They were connected before remotely.
That's fine. Would you?
They're still there.
They're still there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Let's hit the.
You know what happened is it switched to my account because you dropped out and we get back to control.
okay.
We had a power outage. If you can hear us, we can back up in a sec.
Oh, that is really yellow.
There might be something added before we approve the budget.
Oh, good news. No current outages in our area. All right. At least we'll worry about the camera later.
Oh, it's on. It's working.
It's very yellow though.
Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that brief power interruption. Let's see. We're talking about property
That hangar,
investments.
Yeah, so we only have, just due to a contract that was signed a few years back, we have one more Pontius hangar, hangar 954, that is scheduled for us to purchase at the end of the year. So I did budget for that one. I did just earmark hangar purchases in case additional hangars became available, and then also if any property on the surrounding area becomes available for us to purchase.
A general question then.
Mhm.
Let's say for the gate relocation, it's less than 200,000. That just returns to it. I don't know if there's been any quotes done for that, or is that just kind of a
Right, that's just the
As high
estimate.
as
Yeah, if that's the
200.
estimate, yeah, if it comes
Okay.
in less than that, then
Yeah.
obviously that money just stays
Yeah.
with the district in
Okay.
a sense.
I
For
just
the, yeah,
because
Right.
somebody's making estimates and all this. And
yeah,
200,000. That's kind of the
yeah.
ballpark. Okay.
Yeah. And if anything, obviously, since we do budget for each individual item, if something comes in a lot more than that, it may
Mhm.
have to be put on hold, because that has happened where they get estimates on something and then 6 months later, it's, has went up just due to inflation.
Mhm.
Or right now, a lot of product is hard to get a hold of. So
Okay.
that might just get earmarked to the next year if we have to do that. So onto the building improvements. We have scheduled 4 buildings as of right now just to have new roofs done. And again, this is another thing to do rather than have all the leaks in the roof, that these buildings have been several years before since they've done roof replacements. Doing a building 5, which is our maintenance building, doing a new door on that building. Building 173, drainage improvement. That's the Ameripride or Airmark building. They've had some issues with drainage. It's kind of been that way for several years, so we've just now put it on the budget. Building 12, service upgrade. Currently, building 11 and 12 are vacant. They were with one tenant before, so they were on one electrical meter. So we needed to put it on 2 different meters. Let me see. Jimmy, hold on real quick.
What was that?
Hi, Jimmy. There is. Yeah, it was the budget workshop. We did, yeah. No, you can, yeah. Are you going to come here or are you going to just call in? Okay. Bye.
How long?
Okay.
How long till Jim gets here?
Oh, let's see. Look. He was just going to leave his house right now. So it'll probably be, 10 minutes, 5
All right.
minutes?
Okay, well, let's keep on keeping on.
Okay,
Just don't
yeah.
have to be terribly expeditious.
Yep. So as I was saying, this is the electrical for them to separate the buildings so we can rent it out to 2 different tenants and not have to pair them up together. Electrical charging unit and ADA parking at building 1. This is just to add more. We did have a couple units that were given to us. So we're just paying for the infrastructure and putting more electrical charging stations in.
Given to us.
They were on Tira based on a grant. So they were, the company did not return to install them. So they've given us authorization to install them, obviously with our cost. And building 1, just based on several tenants being in there to make them available to the public. GA improvements, we've kind of earmarked this just for building improvements. This could be anything. Yeah, it's a variety of things, just so if anything comes up, any door replacements or anything that's going to be a little bit more.
So repairing GA hangers over there.
Yeah,
Well-
if it's improvements, because we did, when I get to the operating side as well, I did add additional monies into repairs and maintenance
Okay.
for the small odds and end things that come up. But this would be for anything a little bit more. Like we added the solar lights last year, the mailboxes, or if we needed to replace any doors. So anything that comes
Right.
up that we need to actually improve or repair on
Okay. So the improvements would be things like adding the solar, but things like, hey, that concrete's not real level anymore. It jams up a door. That would be in the maintenance and the operating
Potentially,
budget. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
Repair.
That I'm less worried about the improvements and a lot more worried about maintaining what we already have. So
Yeah.
I have more questions when we
yep,
get
and we did add more. We did add more into the repairs and maintenance with the mindset of kind of doing some of those items down in the GA area. Yeah, the auditors tend to focus on improvement or repair.
So something I know that would be helpful to me, monthly we get lists of big checks written. And most of these items, I'm assuming you put out to all your people and say, hey, what capital improvements do you guys have on your, wish list, et cetera, and what needs fixing? Probably not too many items on here except for maybe some of the West Hangar improvements that some of the board members are like, hey, when are we going to take care of some of this stuff? Those are probably the only ones I know of. So there's not a lot of direction from the board down on spending other than oversight. And I think we'd be more effective, I know I would be, if we had some kind of
recap once we have everybody back in the line. Everybody dropped out, right? So
yeah. So I don't know if that's something that you already get provided to you. I mean, you get briefed at every meeting about ongoing activity, but not on a big picture thing. I think it would be helpful to do that prior to us approving the budget, for instance.
And I could, just because I do it on a monthly basis, I like evaluate like this list. I go.
Currently
Okay,
on
I
this,
wondered if it was just us.
does that make sense for the airport? Does that meet our mission statement? That's all.
Okay.
Right.
Do you think it's the whole airport or?
okay, so I think this is a good point, but I'd
Okay.
like to figure out what's
Yeah.
going on here.
Okay, all right.
What's the story?
Chris said building one's completely out. It sounds like it's the whole airport that's
Okay,
down.
so this
So
is
pump house is down. Like everything is down right now.
Jim, you've missed now 3 power outages in the course of this.
In my life, that's exciting. I missed a lot in the last 2 months.
Okay, so yeah, just to catch you up real quick, we let stuff settle out and give people a chance to come back online. So we've gotten through, what was it, infrastructure projects, property investments. We're talking building improvements now. Nothing too terribly contentious so far. And 3 power outages. And
Yes, yeah. As I said, this is
Are we
plenty of jokes.
We are. Yeah.
Yeah, so plenty of jokes about whether or not the microgrid should be incorporated in the budget.
Yeah. And remember you talking about those 25 not wins? I have a feeling it's more now.
The microgrid.
Oh no! Just remember the microgrid people.
Yeah.
Say, hey, we can make your power stable for the sake of your customers. Like, well, it
Well,
sure would be.
sick of us.
Yeah, how about the sake of all of us?
Well, I thought we were going to be a customer, which would make us stupid.
Yeah.
We are. Well,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, it just hasn't happened yet. Right?
well, no, but when it does,
But the justification for it was for the tenants or customers.
Yes. When really
a lot
we
of,
need
a lot of reasons.
There's a lot.
Renting land, 2, controlling rates,
Like I said,
3,
lots of jokes.
stability. Or if you just live on the west side of town where it doesn't go on.
Ooh.
Well,
Well, okay. All right. I'm glad you're here, Jim. That's right.
So I've got backup power, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, all right. So
People
that's
are
where
coming
we
back
are.
on, it looks like.
How's it looking online? We have 5 people again.
6.
Yep.
6.
I just let one more person in.
Okay, so yeah, just to recap for those on the line, discussion didn't continue too much, but we were just chit-chatting about, what other mechanisms would be good for the board to see, to have visibility on the budget, not just the budgeting for the future, but just some means by which to compare, what happened last year, what about the year before, something that is a nice parallel. Now, I know the devil's advocate is, things like, I don't know how you'd necessarily break down the accounts, so I'm not sure if we can give you super clear direction, although added visibility would be nice. Things like, okay, well, how much did we spend on pump 6 last year? I was like, well, that's more of an acute item, so just figuring out the breakdown to something that might be useful.
I do have several different options I can go in, so I can maybe show a couple examples of different things, especially
we can
as
talk
we're
about it afterwards. But
Yeah.
and you could present it, and we could say, hey, here's some other categories we'd like to see. Obviously, if we get too much.
And that's how I report, really, the monthly report, because that's not necessarily what me and the auditors, use the GLs and all of that. That monthly report is your guys' tool. So if we needed to revamp it in any way, we can do that. So, yeah. Like I could show you the operating and then also on the capital side.
So, here's a question that may or may not be relevant to this would be more of a revenue chart too. So that would be another one.
Yep, I do have something, not to kind of go a little bit,
Yeah,
but
I know.
I do have this revenue
Right.
trend to where you can see all the monthly, what is our monthly reoccurring that we've done since 2017, rents and
Yeah.
leases and the fuel sales. The fuel sales I did end up breaking down into gallons as well, because the fuel sales is kind of deceiving, because like this year it looks like we're selling so much fuel and I'm right in line of where we budgeted, but only because the cost went up by so much. And so obviously we're the revenue is higher.
So, for instance, an example would be, okay, the hot fueling of the F-18s. That requires support from crash rescue, right? So there's obviously a cost benefit there. Like by having that, we get that business,
Yeah.
And on this one, roof replacement, there's 4 buildings which I assume we get revenue from leases. And there's the big picture would be, okay, what's the, how much, if those roofs are good for, let's say 10, 15 years, how much revenue are those 4 buildings worth?
Okay.
Like, would we rather just tear the buildings down than re-roof them for $500,000? At some point, it's something that's a decision you make on a day-to-day basis, doesn't concern the board. When it gets above $500,000, maybe it's something that could be, that kind of feedback would be useful. I don't know, or at least discuss so that the public and all of us have an idea of, how we make these choices. When we decide to spend $1 million on maintenance, is it to the benefit of to the airport and or the tenants? Or would we be better off not maintaining something and going a different direction? I don't know. New buildings, whatever. And
I agree with what you're saying in general terms. I don't agree at looking at individual projects from that chart from what we're talking about.
Well, that's why I mentioned the $500,000. Like, if it's a small thing, it's none of my. I don't want to micromanage budgetary additions. When they get really big, I'm going to ask questions anyway, so it would avoid that. If we say, by the way, this thing's going to cost us this much money, but this is why we think.
Well, what I was thinking is, I think it would be really good for the board to see. Okay, we look at the 21-22 fiscal year. Here's a chart. This is where this is where we spend our money on property investments, on building improvements, on infrastructure projects. And then you look at what we're projecting to do.
And what the revenue is. Right. Something like that.
And what our revenue,
top level.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. But I think it also would be good for you to see where a chart, a pie chart, something that lays out or delineates what percentage of your dollars are going. What percentage of your dollars are being spent on each one of your operating expense categories?
Right. Because I think giving us the information, starting with the general, will avoid a lot of questions with the specific, or maybe eliminate them because they don't concern us. Because, if we're generating more revenue than we're spending on maintaining that revenue generating thing, and the client and the community, the tenants are all happy, there's no reason to question.
Yes, sir.
From a budgetary standpoint, obviously. There's other strategic things, but we're here talking about budget. So my point is, having that kind of summary would be very useful.
Yes.
For, how many operations on the airport do we get? How much money do we get from the federal government and the state? And how many takeoffs and landings? And then how much do we spend on maintenance averaged over 5 or 10 years? That kind of thing. So, like, do we need to maintain 3 runways, or do we okay to have 2? We decide something like that. Long-term strategic things, which I think is what the board's job is.
Like I said,
that's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
I'm not proposing shutting down the runway, closing crash rescue, any of those things, but they need to be, everything should be reviewed for its value to our mission statement.
Well, one of the things that I think this is 2 point too. One of the things I've thought about a lot over the last year in particular, and I've had a pretty depth conversation with Tim on this, whereas a commercial service airport will typically establish what their costs are per employment. And becomes a metric in which they live by. What I would like to do is look at what is our cost per operation? How much does it cost? What are we spending per aircraft operation?
Business that kind of surprised me. It was less about doing those things as if she was playing a game to increase profit. I'm like, we don't need to make profit. We just need to be sustainable and grow as needed to support the community. You know, if there's a reason to double the size of the airport and run under operations, we should. You know, if it's beneficial. If it's not, then we should be sustainable the size we are. But it's not about making profit. You know, she was going to buy those buildings in town and rent them. I'm like, does that support our mission statement? I'm not sure. So yes.
And that's what some of the, us putting the money back into the airport. These are all things I think to improve like the capital side of it, to where we're making sure that we keep 6 months of operating expenses in the bank, just as like our earmark kind of money, just in case something were to happen. But when we're budgeting overall, all these items, I do believe, add value to the airport. We're not
questioning that.
So,
yeah, like I said, I don't think anyone on the board wants to micromanage the administration's maintenance of things and all that. But there's probably a threshold, much like leases, that we have to get involved in. So if there's a big ticket item for maintenance or budgetary, it should be a similar criteria where you give us enough insight into to help us be informed in the community. So if someone is alarmed, sticker shock, wow, they're spending this much on roofing, why aren't they fixing this? You say to yourself all those questions and you say, well, we're spending this much on these buildings because they generate this much revenue. They have important anchor tenants that say on the airport, et cetera, et cetera.
So for the sake of continuing on that, I appreciate desire to want, some visibility in perhaps some other areas or some different summaries. And I think that would be great, perhaps in preparation for the next budget workshop. Director Morgan, do you feel comfortable that you have enough background to continue proceeding as is, recognizing perhaps there's some improvements to be made next time?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to vote on the budget today, is that correct?
Right.
No, but we're going to go through
So if we could have some of that background before we vote on the budget, then we can make informed decisions.
Yeah, we have to compile several reports and different things. Obviously, what I give the auditors, that's just, like I said, I can give you the audit financials, but those don't necessarily break it down to kind of what you're looking for, because they have their way of, because of being a county, they have their own mechanisms of the GL codes to pull.
And I think it's beneficial to the community too.
So,
the more I'm not talking about minutia. I'm talking about big picture transparency, so that people understand what we do here, and what our direction is. Because money is what's important to most ventures, and where the money goes points to where we think what's important to us.
And so I think that's a fine statement and all. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. But for things that are directly actionable for the staff for this year's budget exercise, are there specific things that you want to see more visibility on? Is there some report you want to see before we vote? Is there something to keep track of so we can have very specific deliverables?
Some kind of roll up by category of expenses. Where do we value what we do?
So, but
I don't know what the level is. Maybe it's maybe it's
right. So, is there
$400,000
something
or $500,000 level? Maybe it's based on topic, not dollar value. But in the case here, the only reason I bring up the roofs is because it's the biggest ticket item. So I'm not going to quibble over someone estimating a door at $25,000 because it just doesn't matter.
Yes,
the door will get done if it costs $30,000.
But so would it make sense then as we go through this to give specific things to staff to say, hey, can we have better resolution on this or clarification how it's changed through years so that we can have that visibility by the time we vote on it?
Yeah. And then I can get, I can work with Floyd too and see if he has an exact dollar amounts for each one of those roofs. I know he
as
does.
A suggestion, and I'm not sure this will work, and we could try, you could show me what categories you're using for the auditors, things like that, and you could come back and say, here's what I came up with.
Yeah.
But I'd be glad to look over your shoulder and say, yeah, that looks great. But just from a if something's over a single item's over $250,000,
Okay.
then you say, okay, does it have its own category or not?
Okay.
So the answer might be it's lumped in, it might be already lumped under 10 other things that add up to 20 million.
Right.
And you don't need to break it out. But if it's a single item that's unique, it deserves its own section of the pie chart if it's over $250,000, let's say.
Yep. And if you're looking, so if we wanted to do that, the budget, I have the staff memo that I usually type up.
Not budget expenses.
Oh, yeah.
So like,
Do we-
or maybe bigger, maybe it's $500,000, I don't know, but a big ticket item.
Yep.
Categories.
Do you want it on like what we're working on now, or do you want it on like our items that we've done in this last year? Like, so,
Yeah, past, it's
Okay.
historical
Okay.
expenses that says this is where we,
in the,
yeah, because I think the way it works is we look at, we like the way it's going or we don't like the way it's going. Oh, look where we spent all our money. And
Okay.
that's, I think, where the board would make strategic changes in direction is saying, yeah, don't do anything different. We like the way the pie chart looks, or we wish this section was bigger. And then we can have the discussion, how do we get that money? Do we go after grant money? Do we spend less to increase this piece of the pie chart? That's all. Like, I don't have a feel for, I know Chuck and I are passionate about why hasn't there been any development or growth in the GA hangar region? Well, what does that cost and what do we spend elsewhere? What percentage of the budget is that? Is that strategically smart? I think we'd be better informed in saying, wow, we should be spending 4 times as much over there, or maybe not much more at all. Just maybe it's only the maintenance that was neglected.
To tear down 14 hangars and not have a plan for building new ones is clearly not how we should proceed.
Yeah, clearly.
okay. So I can kind of go through based on how it's all broken down for the past and see how it is. And then going forward, I can identify, each area's GA or tenant, or I know in the past we've had,
I'm thinking things like infrastructure, operating
Okay.
expense, right? Those are kind of categories.
And the operator, that's very, very,
salary.
very big.
It is, but so you decide if it's something that's unique, if it's something that is not required, it could be, and it's more than $500,000, you break it out in its own chunk for the label.
Yeah,
And you say, okay, there's something else.
yeah. So I'll review it and kind of see what numbers I can come up with. And two, when we close out the year, after
Yeah.
June 30th, and we close it out and I report June, since we're closing out our year, I can provide additional information to see, okay, this is how we finished up the year. Just in that way.
A suggestion, probably no more than 20 categories,
Okay, yeah, no.
right? Because then you can't even process.
Yeah.
It's getting too detailed.
Yep.
Fixated, Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, if it's something you want, I'm certainly not opposed. I'm just content with the level of visibility that I currently have. So now I wouldn't complain about an extra report with the broad strokes, but like I have the audit from last year and I'll sit down, hold them next to each other and look at it, especially the stuff that I'm particularly keen on. So I don't really feel like I'm missing visibility into anything. I'm not opposed to anything you said, but.
Well, and I think the community would too. I think it's better for transparency. So here's what we've
So I
done.
could
I think
yeah.
we'd all be more informed.
I could make something similar to this. We have this for revenue. I could make something similar like this with expenses,
Yeah.
and maybe on a
Maybe
kind
a
of
pie
utilize
chart.
the same thing.
Yeah, pie chart.
And break it down by certain areas if I could
Right.
break it down like that.
Thank you.
I would say projects at over $250,000 will provide an explanation. List the project separately in a description.
Who would determine whether the roofs need replacement? Like that type of thing would be nice to know. I mean, someone said, hey, these need to be replaced, and
They're leaking.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they fix the
Okay.
tile. I was like, this
That's
room leaks
good.
every time it rains. I
No.
usually come through and look.
that's good.
And it's not feasible to continue to repair it using these people.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because we've been just doing repairs to this building, but anytime, yes, it's only 1-2 days a year, but when we do get the rain, we all walk around looking up to see.
I can't chew more down.
Okay, so the other one is in this building, the men's restroom to update it to ADA compliant. And then also it's been a while. I don't remember when the last upgrade was in this bathroom here. And there are issues
There's
with
someone there?
this building, with this bathroom, the men's restroom.
Is it gonna stop stinking at 7 a.m. every
That's
day?
I was trying to find a nice way to say like, well,
Probably not.
it definitely needs some repairs, but
It gasses out the pilot's line prior to 7 a.m. every
yes.
day.
That's for reuse. Today.
but we are hoping to improve that. for sure.
Fantastic.
That's yeah. Like I said, I'm
More air freshener.
yeah. Oh, we've had so many
We are
around here.
past that. So past
This
that.
one gets bad too. Same problem.
Oh, does it?
And this is replacing one of the air conditioners on this building. It's actually completely not working right now. So like my office, Tim's office, that side of it, they keep band-aiding it. It works for a little while and then it starts doing surges and then it goes out again. So we are looking into different options on that to just put one AC or change them out to mini splits. So then the maintenance on them are a little bit less. And if one goes out, it's just one room, not half of a building.
They're more efficient, aren't they?
Yeah.
I put one on one of my houses on my up to that. Yeah, I don't even notice it on the project.
Yeah, there's and then also too with an office staff, usually you have the battling of the thermostat, which a lot of times ends up ruining everything because one person wants it's cold, one buddy doesn't. So we're looking at doing that. These two items are pump house sensor improvements and a pressure reducing station sensor improvement. Painting building 11 and 12. As I said, these buildings, FRI was in them for several years, so there was no maintenance or upkeep done on them. So now that they're vacant, we wanted to get them painted. They're right across from like building 79. This is purchasing a drone for the airport.
What?
Okay, I probably need to explain this one.
I was like, tell me more.
Okay, so
$15,000 drone?
So basically, guys, and once again, I'm not married to this idea, but we're throwing it out there because as a goal of becoming more technologically savvy and to increase safety. I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but the number one operator of drones, company-wise in the United States, is Union Pacific Railroad. Why the railroad? Because when they have a derailment, they send in a drone to look at hazardous material before sending people in. What we like to do is kind of go down this road. We want to be able to, at our test site, go in with a drone and provide information real time to our first responders in order to better our response to incidents at the test site. This drone is expensive, but this actually is a relatively inexpensive drone in the grand scheme of things. It can also be used to help out with surveying. If there are survey packages that are available that we can incorporate into our existing surveying efforts. And another thing that we're looking at doing with this drone is that there's software packages that can be incorporated to maybe potentially assist us with doing FOD inspections on an airfield. I think that's a big long-term goal. But this would be the first step, is to actually purchase the equipment and to start putting it to use. I think the first would be to assist with first responders in an emergency situation.
Okay, so what does that $15,000 get us? Like, surely that's more, footprint than just the drone itself.
Right. It gets you. It's the drone itself. There's a station for the drone, and I'm still learning, guys, because drones is relatively new to me. So, but it's like it's a docking station. So the device comes back, docks, downloads information, uploads the information, and then goes out to the various sites. The
software package.
Yeah, the software package.
Is it like training, operation of it? Is that all rolled up into here too?
I don't think. I think a preliminary training, but it's not. It would have to be operated by a 107 drone operator, obviously. But I can get more information for you if you'd like to break it down what all is the cost associated with that.
I'd like to know more because when you brought up the test site out, there's a lot of hazardous fuels and stuff. Does this drone have sensors that can detect those to report back? I mean, visually it's hard to see the gas. I'd like to know more.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sensors are not. But even if you're working with the agency that had a company that had an incident, be like, oh, that tank ruptured, that tank's bad, or I can see that tank looks good.
They use. I was doing the job the other day, and I hear this drone, and it's Edison inspecting the lines up in the mountains for transformers.
Yeah.
Climb up there to do it would be almost impossible.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting.
Again, not married to it, but I think that this would take us in the right direction of technology. But I'll get you additional information.
On vehicles, so the next one is security, getting one additional vehicle. And then also a new vehicle for ops. The vehicle that we currently have for ops, the Equinox, will go to security. And then the no phone.
Excuse me. So this is an example of, I don't have a feel for how many vehicles do we operate? What is that annual expense? Own, lease, et cetera. Do you have any idea?
No, how many security vehicles we have?
Vehicles total that the airport operates, and what that expense is. So is this, when we add a vehicle or replace a vehicle, is that 5% of the vehicle budget? Is it 30%? Is it?
I'll get those exact numbers. They did within a few months ago when they surplus 2 vehicles that had stopped working. So this was kind of to replenish those vehicles. But we waited till the new budget year to make any of those transitions. But yeah, I can get kind of some more of the details on the vehicles just to kind of look.
And again, I don't necessarily need details as much as kind of where's that fit in the big picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't want to break down of, how often we get the cars washed and stuff.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not looking for more detail. I'm looking for how's that fit in the big picture.
Yeah.
And do we spend $500,000 a year on vehicles as part of our expenses?
And typically, and that's with the 2 vehicles that came for surplus, once they become, replacing, if we're especially replacing things on them time and time again, just like you would we'll surplus the vehicle and then wait to when we have the monies available, rather than put new tires on something, the new transmission. And, but it kind of each department kind of analyzes their own fleet. We don't like to have vehicles just sitting.
So, but I think the questions you're asking about, I suspect we're going to see some of those answers when we get to the operating expenses, right? We budgeted this much for,
the repairs.
Yeah. So that kind of thing. That's why, I'm hoping some of your questions will be answered. I mean, we'll get to that.
Yeah. And that's what the reason why the ops security had requested 2 vehicles, but the Equinox had been equipped for security with all the radios and cameras and whatnot. So, obviously, the vehicle is just going to be another one added to our fleet, not necessarily, going to replace. Like I said, the 2 that were surplus, we're replacing those that we did.
We gave our vehicles to, when they surplus those vehicles, we gave our vehicles to security.
Yeah.
And now,
right. Yes, because the one.
The Equinox.
Yeah.
That needs to be with security.
Yeah.
Why do you say that? Just because of mileage?
Because it's got all the it's equipped with all the radios.
Oh, okay.
And
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Why is it?
It kind of was equipped originally to think that it would be passed to security, because security does probably the most miles out of everyone here at the airport, just from their night. They drive 24/7. No foam testing equipment for ARF. This is something Tim has been working with the fire department on getting our trucks brought up to code and where we should be able to test the foam without. Yes.
So you guys are probably aware of PFAS or forever chemicals. AFFF, which is the concentration that's in the trucks that produce the foam, has PFAS in it. Traditionally or historically, what I've been told that they used to do is they would just do when they would do the foam testing, they would do a release onto the ramp, do a spectrometer test, and then determine that the mixture is correct. We don't want to do that. We don't want to release PFAS anymore, right? We want to. So what this system does is it's actually all your ARF trucks now come equipped with these no foam systems. Our trucks are older and they don't have them, so we have to install them. Even though this is I'd say a significant upfront cost, it will save us I can't imagine what it's going to cost for reclamation of PFAS. I don't know what that guidance is going to look like, but this is probably a very smart option for us. The other option is potentially trying to collect the foam during testing into a pool, allowing it to evaporate and then disposing of it properly. It's just not efficient. So this is probably the best option that we have.
Or we allow the testing company to bring the equipment and hook it up and when they do the tests. And that's like $20,000 each time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were kind of moving in that direction. So this is actually putting it on the budget to be able to move forward with that. Fire extinguisher training simulator. Our fire department does fire extinguisher training for several of our tenants. So this will help with that. The vault improvement. This is part of the generator. This is the project that's already underway. We're about halfway done with it. That we received 50% of the money from the state of California for this generator.
State of California, is that Caltrans? I think that's part of the state.
I want to say though it was through Cal, but it was the OES branch, I believe. I'm like, it's Cal OES, yeah. I know where the check came from. But yeah, they had several options available to us, and Floyd had submitted options, and then they selected that our vault would qualify for the grant. Yeah. This other vehicle that I put on here, this is actually, we're in talk about changing out the Ford Focus we have for the admin office. That's just kind of utilized by several, is to switch it out to something smaller, a smaller van. Because like Lynn uses it to take people to their tenant locations to look at property. It will just make it so we can get more people in that vehicle. And if we were to get it electric, we have the 2 charging stations right outside here, 58, that actually are under a grant right now. So they're free for the next 2 years. So if we utilized that electric charging station, they would be right here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Focus it's good while it's been but we would with the Focus, we would go trade that in for the additional vehicle. We would not, it's not a full replacement. We're not just adding another vehicle to our fleet. So, because the admin building, we just need one vehicle, just so if anyone needs to go out with customers. Building 5 roof. This is the one that had blown off with one of the windstorms.
I thought that was under warranty.
It was under insurance. So with insurance, they only replaced it with exactly what was on there before, and it was a metal roof before, which doesnent hold up in the winds.
I don't think it needs code either.
Yeah. So the insurance company only wanted to replace what was on it, but we went in the direction to get it done right, so we don't have it blowing off in the wind.
Yeah.
I guess it's getting put to its test today.
48 knots right now.
Yeah. Capital equipment, a 0-turn mower, scissor lift, flatbed equipment trailer. We don't have one, and right now in the maintenance department, if they have to take the forklift anywhere, they have to drive it. So if it's going out to the test site, if it's going somewhere, they actually have to drive it. So the flatbed equipment trailer would allow them to trailer items.
Is that big enough trailer to do a big tractor? Back over.
It should be able to do our
I mean,
equipment
obviously,
that
if
we
you're
have.
going to spend that kind of money on a
Yeah.
trailer, you want to have some
Yeah.
capability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The security airfield radar too. These are the radars that we're changing 1 a year. Jason is improving them. We did one last year, so we're going to do another one this year.
So this is our radar cannon system, or what is this?
Todd has more information.
It's the radar we use. Okay, so we have radar out. Right now, we have radar only in 2 different areas of the airfield. And that radar allows us to tell what activity, if there's somebody out there, if something's going on, whenever nobody's out there, when nobody should be out there. If there's somebody that we think has penetrated our perimeter and is going running toward the test site.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. It's
Yeah.
nothing to do with aviation radar.
No.
It's
No,
our
but we
security
can
radar.
we also monitor speeds.
Wind speeds.
Well, people,
Yeah.
car speeds. Driving out there.
Yeah.
Can it see people not in vehicles?
Can't see people not in vehicles.
Person on
An
foot.
object, yeah, right,
It'll
yes,
pick that up.
yes.
And is this replacing one that already existed, or is this adding?
This is
A
adding.
new one. Yeah.
That's probably a closed session item of, okay, well, what's covered and what isn't.
These are replacing existing radars. We have 5 radars. We've only got 1 in operation. The other 4 are, these would be replacing the 4 that are not working right now.
Yeah,
One at a time.
this is one where I would like to better understand like what is covered, what is not. But that's closed session.
I mean, yeah, you're talking about over $300,000 with 5 of these.
For yeah.
That's why we're doing 1 at a time per year.
Well, I guess my question is, that's something I think the board should take up is what's the value of it?
I think that's a good example of what
we're
talking about.
And then this is putting the Zoom equipment in our conference room here in the back of the building and also over at Corsair. So in that way,
that would be nice.
Yes, anybody can utilize those 2 rooms.
Is that something we charge for? Service.
At their tenants, we don't currently charge for the rental of the rooms. If they're not a tenant, then we do have a rental fee. Yeah, we try to use it for our tenants as a courtesy.
It's a value added.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Centerfield and Runway 12 Airfield Weather Station. High availability equipment, firewall phone system. The security video wall server 2023, and then the security video wall monitors 2023. GPS equipment. And then this is a digital entry sign that we had talked about, I believe, at one meeting, if we wanted to put something at one of our entrances so that way we could advertise for the fitness center, the event center, or anytime there's any special activity, we could do Plain Crazy on there. There used to be the Lamar sign towards the entrance of the airport that we didn't have control over what was on it. But then this way, if it's ours, then we can have control over what is put up on the signs.
How big of a sign is that?
Jason, how big of a sign is that one?
That would be for a 10 by 20 sign. 10 feet by 20 feet.
Then something like on a pole?
Yeah.
Like you see at the fairground or something like that?
Yeah, and it's digital, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Versus something that's not one of these some trailer.
No,
Okay.
no, this would be
That's what I'm
fixed.
trying to
It's a
do.
jumbotron.
Yeah.
Like the GPS equipment, that's like surveying type stuff.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, currently right now we have it outsourced, so anytime we have to bring somebody in to do it, we have to pay that organization. So this will make it to where we can do it in-house. The server rotation is rotating 2 servers this year. Visual sensor for AWAS.
What does that mean, rotating them?
Is that tech
Retiring
refresh?
and
Yeah,
replacing?
it's just like a tech refresh. He'll rotate them. Jason's on the line, but to my knowledge, like the servers that are used have more capacity, he'll rotate, put a new one in there, so that way they don't crash on us.
Yeah, so any server runs 24/7, 365 of the oldest age servers, I'll take those 2 and replace them with new servers. So we'll just keep rotating them so they stay in a life cycle.
What's a life cycle for one, Jason?
I typically put them between 3 to 5 years, depending on load. Obviously, like for example, the security server that does all the cameras, that's a 3-year life cycle. A lesser one, such as like maybe the badge access one, would get a 5-year cycle. But we have roughly about 14 servers. So of those 14, the 2 oldest ones will get replaced.
So this is another example of where some kind of executive summary kind of would be like if you took capital equipment and you made a pie chart and you said what percentage of this stuff is actual equipment on the runways or directly supporting aircraft operations, I think you'd find it's 5 or 10% or something. Where now this is only a request. It's not necessarily the same as expenses, but you could say, well, 80 or 90% is overhead type support. And you're like, that seems like a lot. Was that right? Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But that's something that from year to year you could look at it and think, gee, we're not efficient.
For an example, one of these servers will replace the audio recorder for the airfield. So all radio communications get recorded to a server for FAA appraisal if there's an incident. one of these servers is going to replace an existing server that does that function. So that would be for airfield operation. So if you need a pie chart, I could put something together that would show with what the server's doing, if it's for airfield or if it's for administration.
No, it wasn't for that one line item. It was, maybe you didn't hear us earlier because we lost power, but I was saying to the rest of the directors and Carrie that if we had a executive summary of expenses from year to year and historical, it'd be useful for nailing down the big picture and seeing where the monies get spent. And then that would help better inform, if we like the direction, then we don't need to change anything in the budget. If the budget reflects similar to the previous expenses, if it's outstanding, then we decide, yep, this is a necessary thing now or not. And I get it, things come in, especially when it's replacement or maintenance items, it comes in spurts. But over the long haul, you can get an idea of where our priorities are.
Yeah, so after talking about that one too, I could definitely take this spreadsheet and we can kind of line item, like I said, to airfield or to AV, depending on it is, and do a percentage on it and see what we can come up with, so I can kind of give you a couple ideas.
Yeah.
For the budget.
Yeah, like the signage, that's nearly 1/5 of the capital equipment request.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Maybe it does. If the capital equipment overall is a low budgetary item, it doesn't matter what the breakdown is. If it's a huge chunk, then you're like, okay, is this where we want to prioritize, when other things are lacking? So it's the whole point of a budget is you got to work within it. So having a better feel for how we prioritize the way we want to prioritize could be useful information. I think the directors and the community would benefit,
Okay. And then the visual sensor for AWAS, and then the drone detection.
What is the visual sensor for AWAS?
For visibility,
RVR.
yeah, like for similar to RVR, yeah, it gives the horizontal visibility.
Okay.
And then
The drone detection, I know we'd heard a little bit of a report, but so a decision was made that we're going to go with that equipment. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes.
With the drone detection? I got a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it going to be required by the FAA someday and do we interface that in with our tower? And it's a cool tool and it's a nice to know, but is it practical and what's the word? Implemented? Can we implement it into our system? That
My concern is we're not going to do any enforcement with it.
Right.
We're not going to do anything with it. So my question would be, if it had, the value would be if we had some kind of enforcement policy or deterrent to say, hey, this is a safety issue and we're going to do something based on that information,
Well,
then it's worth. And I was under the impression that security is not going to come from.
Well, hang on. But from Chris's brief, it wasn't that he did say he's not going to confront them. That doesn't mean no enforcement. Information from the drone ID gets forwarded to the FAA.
Yeah,
So we don't do it, but we do forward information that we get from that system to the FAA to go get them.
Assuming they're registered, right?
is this something the FAA is requesting? I mean, is this something?
This is not something that's required,
Yeah.
but eventually it will be required. We are responsible for policing our airspace for the drones.
And
submitting that
that's in the
information.
red. Okay, that's what I'm getting.
Submitting that information.
It's a requirement they have. Is there
No.
funding for
I mean,
that?
Well, yeah, as far as we're responsible for policing, okay, but is it left nebulous, or is it, hey, you need a system, go figure out your system, or is it, tower needs to keep an eye out? So when we say we're responsible, what is the law
Right.
say?
Like policing means
Okay.
put a NOTAM up if you know there's going to be drone activity, for instance. I don't know that it means
And we've
surveillance activity.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also had somebody flying drones from over the airfield, actually over the Stroud Launch Facility, and they were over here in the yard, the trailer yard, the RV park. So, you know, when that occurs, the tenants don't call the FBI. The tenants call us, say, hey, you got a drone in your airspace. Do something about it. And that's when we search and we find the people who did it, call the police, and sometimes you get your people, sometimes you don't.
Well, I mean, okay. I just, you know, like Radio Shack used to sell drones, right? Here in Mojave. Very simple ones a long time ago. And those probably don't have any kind of like ID that's reportable.
Here's my
about
question.
half a pound is legally
Does
required.
the general manager recommend it? Because you're the one that's close to this.
Well, that's, yeah, definitely. I would recommend this system. The reason I would recommend this system is because it's been used at other locations, and we can verify the success rate that they've had. And it's significantly more reasonable than other systems we looked at.
I get, even if it's doesn't have any false positives, I guess my concern with Chris's report was, that was my first question, is it like reliable and accurate? But if it is, why should we, you know, what's the point of documenting it if we don't do anything? If we don't change, if I go out and fly tomorrow and I've never seen it, other than the air racing that happens with model airplanes out here at 9 a.m., well, maybe one or two exceptions. I've almost never seen a drone, and I never have for my airplane. But you'd think the sky is full of them based on that data we got from the preliminary report from Chris. He was going to invite that guy to present to us. I don't think that happened. But anyway, my question is, are we going to... I'm concerned about the safety. If it's a tool for safety and we have a way to like track people down and threaten them with, you know, or deter them, that's a good use of it. But I wasn't clear that we were doing either of those. We were just going to collect the data.
But we submit the information, we submit the data to FBI and to FAA, and they use that data to track the people down.
Assuming, I mean, are most of these transmitters registered, like, to a person?
Anything about
Because,
having
I don't know the
legally by the FAA, it has to be.
I can tell you that the ones that
Yeah.
not all that we've encountered out here, but a lot, the majority of what we've encountered out here have been registered. And a lot of times it's people that, I don't want to say they don't know any better, but they'll, yeah, that they shouldn't be flying in Class D airspace.
So they probably don't have the drone license. They just purchased it and they launched it. But, you know.
So you submit this information to the FBI, FAA. Are they requesting you to submitting it, or they just happen to have a program where we submit it? I'm getting to a point is, if it's something they're going to require, obviously I would think they would fund it to some degree.
Right.
Well, that's a good question.
Well, FAA also, they also allow us to have a launch operator's license, and they don't fund any.
No, okay. I get what you're saying. That's why, again, if you recommend it, I'll support it.
There's been a lot of projects that are the FAA approved. FAA says that's a great idea. We endorse that project. You turn around and you go to FAA for funding. They said, "Look, whoa, we said it was a good idea. We didn't say we was going to fund it."
Well, again, if it's a requirement, then it gets into, okay, if you're going to require it, fund it. That would be my argument.
I think by law they might have to.
Well, no, I mean, we're required, like, they're not paying for our PAPIs. We're paying for our PAPIs. There's a lot of requirements that we just need to figure out and pay for ourselves.
I won't read it.
But I mean, if there is a grant available or something, I mean, it means it's worth looking into and asking, which is, I think, the point is that there might be money out there.
Well, and I'm sure it's on his radar. If something comes up, then there's money. I don't think we're going to have to ask him to.
The also, you know, to that point, is this something that would be eligible for our bills fund, which doesn't specifically state drone detection equipment would be eligible, but I think we can come up with the verbiage to make that. More to follow on that. We'll leave it there for right this second.
Might
Look at that.
express, I think that is a small enough amount that this is a decision that would be left to you to make for the most part. But that doesn't mean I don't want to offer feedback as kind of a general guideline of course how the board feels. And I'm like, if it adds value as opposed to it's an interesting thing, like how do we get the value out of it?
Well,
like, what percentage of those 35 a
tie
week?
safety to it, and it's pretty easy.
Right, but if there's 35 reports of violations of Class D a week in drones, how many of those have ID numbers that can be traced to a person versus just anonymous things? Because if they're 90% anonymous or more, and the fees that are not anonymous are actually outside the Class D because this thing's picking up stuff all the way down to Lake Hughes practically. When we got the previous report, I'm like,
It'll pick up all the way to Randsburg, but you can also tell where it's located too. So it'll pick it up and be like, oh, that's out of it.
So my question is, how many were inside the Class D that are identifiable, like that there is some kind of enforcement activity or cautionary? You send them a letter that says, hey, we noticed, we could do that. Why can't we send them a letter if it's, if the registration is public, like airplanes, see there I get on board. I'm like, oh, we send them a threatening letter saying, hey, you violated some airspace here. There could be, you could be prosecuted if you do this.
Is this an always on system?
Hey guys, this is Chris. If I could, I'd like to make a few comments on it. Sorry about that, guys. I had to get on something with a better connection. To answer one of the questions earlier, this system in particular versus some of the others that we had looked at will actually show us the location of the pilot before they even lift off of the ground, which gives us an opportunity to go out and remind them, hey, you're operating inside of a Class Delta airspace. Are you familiar with the rules? If you fly, here are the consequences. We'll take this information, turn it over to the FAA, the FBI, and chances are, with the way everybody's going now, they will prosecute.
Okay, so your intent was, because I think we discussed this when you presented the preliminary data, and it wasn't clear to me. I was a little confused as to whether you implied you weren't going to take any action.
Other than warning them that what they're doing is against regulation, there's really not a whole lot we as the airport can do.
Tell them that they're...
Yes, no, absolutely. And during
I'm not saying going in there with guns blazing or anything.
During the demo that we had, I was actually fortunate enough that I was able to make it to two of the pilots and discuss it with them. Once they understood it, they landed the aircraft, and that was the end of it.
Okay.
We don't have the authority to do something to them, per se. A letter would be good.
Or a personal, hey.
Yeah, education, just like
you drive up and you say, hey, you're violating the airspace.
Right. That's the limit to what we can.
That's plenty.
That's
if you witness it and you tell them we're going to report this,
yes,
or not, if you do it again, that's probably adequate. That's really all you need.
I got it. Would this be a tool that the tower would have access to? In other words, you got a guy coming around on 802.6 and says, hey, we got drone activity 300 feet, off the end of the
right.
fade or something. As
so this is something
real nice to know.
Right.
Yes, that information is provided to the tower.
Yeah, so security would let the tower know.
Sorry, sir?
Yeah, security would let the tower know.
Right, yes.
This is actually something that the tower would have direct access to, and it could alert them if something comes into the airspace.
There would be coordination back and forth between the tower and security.
If they're coming in at 100 knots, a few seconds could be, hey, go around.
Okay.
And Chris, the modern drones, they have the identification that they have to broadcast. Can you detect drones that don't have that system in it? That they're unidentified.
Not with this system, unfortunately. But
those around, but
yeah, talking with other folks about the systems that they've used and what they've been able to pick up, even with the ones that can pick up the ones that aren't broadcasting that ID. They're talking 1 out of 100, 120 registered flights that those systems have picked up.
Thanks.
Right, is that it for capital equipment?
Yep. And the last item on here is the OPEB contribution, which we've been doing that for the last 3 years. And this is just staying with the $250,000 contribution. This helps our unfunded liability. We did have, I just got the report for this year. Our unfunded liability still is $2.9 million for health benefits for the retirees. So this amount that we put in helps us considerably because CalPERS, the rate of return was 22% last year.
Is that adequate enough? Do we need to bump that up?
I think because we are still paying as we go with the retirees, because what they factor in is that you draw down your trust. But right now we're just contributing in. We're not drawing down our trust just yet. So we're trying to get the
I would like to
employees.
see us go down.
Okay.
I think a lot of our employees, and I think you want to know that when you do retire, that there's going to be.
Well, yeah, and actually not drawing it down allows more money to stay in the trust. So we're actually better to just keep contributing money into it and then let our unfunded liability come down. Because where this started at, I guess so 3 years ago, we didn't have to put our unfunded liability on our financial statements, and they changed that 3 years ago. So then our financial statements, when it looks like you owe $6.4 million, it was a little bit of an eye opener. So we are just trying to get that unfunded liability down for our financial statements to even out. Yeah. So that's all for the capital items. Like I said, capital items are typically anything over the $500,000 mark. That would be a fixed asset item. And as I mentioned, I can, on an ongoing basis, when I'm doing my monthly reports, kind of indicate the items that they are currently working on. Obviously, I can do the charts, but I already, at the point a project's completed, I tally that out, exactly what it cost us, and it goes into our fixed assets. So I can add that to my reports. I actually did a full comparison with this year's budget that we're looking at, the operating budget. Just switched. As I mentioned before, the fuel sales, still factoring in selling 1 million gallons of fuel, but just with the cost of fuel, that kind of fluctuates. So to budget dollar amounts, it's a little challenging just because the fuel has been ranging, and I don't see it coming down anytime soon. Just kind of show the columns. So this is what I'm budgeting for next year. This is what we budgeted for last year.
Can you wiggle your cursor a little bit more when you say those things?
Yeah. So this column F, is what I'm budgeting for this year, or this upcoming year. This is what we budgeted for in 21-22. This is the difference between the 2 years. And then this is where the actuals are as of April 30th in column I. So I'm just going to hide these because this is the total, I feel like it might be easier to. It's not one. So I went over fuels, and then this is rents and leases. It did increase that to 7.3 million. Right now, our rents and leases, our monthly reoccurring is running from 600 to 630,000 based on our current tenants. Other revenue is monies we receive for access licenses, filming location, just a wide variety of as others are coming onto the airport.
What do you attribute repairs and maintenance? Just the cost of everything, or do we anticipate more because we?
So on repairs and maintenance, I increased it for this year because we were talking about doing the maintenance down in the GA area on the pavement.
Oh, okay,
So, yeah.
there's something tied to that particular.
To the
number.
reason why
Okay.
for the uptick in it, yeah. And that was primarily focused on that, because Boyd's gonna get started in that in July. So,
Is that based on an estimate of actual things that need to be repaired, or is it, hey, we're just going to throw an extra percentage on it?
Based on a dollar amount for the pavement repairs.
Okay, that's for so for maintenance, for repairs and maintenance. So that's going to be pavement. What about like the hangars and the shaper? And
Yes, and hangers. So how much did you bump?
so we do have, the capital items, we have the improvements, which like you said, if it's an actual improvement to where we are making the airport more value to, changing out a door, changing out the concrete to where we're replacing the concrete, that'll come out of the capital that we budgeted that. This is like your repairs and maintenance. Maybe if we're just putting a Band-Aid on, the pavement until we get to the project of taking it all out and starting from scratch.
okay,
Yeah. Salaries and benefits, this did go up. We did, in talking with all the departments and Todd.
Excuse me, ma'am. Back to Diane's question. So we calculated the pavement costs $160. The replacement, $160 later. In order to do, and what we looked at, the next tranche, if you will, we looked at some of the cracks down, and the next step in that equals about 160 feet. So we're thinking an additional $150,000 on what we put toward that.
okay. So it's based on the pavement. Okay, I'm glad the pavement is on our radar. Again, per discussions we've had about that one hangar, I was in just a couple of weeks. The amount of money just to repair that hangar. Now I'm thinking about, okay, what are the other hangars that I haven't seen? Are they in similar shape? Like that hangar is bad.
Is it one that we own?
Yes, I was physically incapable of closing it. I spent 45 minutes on the door and I couldn't get it to close. It was so badly misaligned for not just the concrete,
There's
but no
a lot
longer
of
being.
hangars like that.
Yeah.
I've rented hangars out there, 963, for instance. There's a bunch that the sliding doors can't be opened or closed because of the heaving of this cement.
That's so there's $700,000 is budgeted.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Can you scroll down, please?
and this is, I guess, to credit, Bob's thoughts. Well, okay, well, how much did we spend on it last year? And it didn't get us to where we needed to be. So I would imagine that number needs to be higher to get us to an acceptable state.
Okay.
So how different is it from year to year? It's okay, looking at repairs and maintenance. Okay, if we had 625,000 last year, is 75,000 going to make a dent?
So it shouldn't, because there's no difference. If you contribute the 75 to the asphalt.
Yeah, then that's
obviously the cost of everything's gone up.
Also, the percentage of hangars owned by the airport is going up every year too. So that'll be induced in the repair
It
cost.
needs to be bigger.
yeah. If we've just budgeted to purchase more hangars in case they come up, no,
Yeah.
we're talking about another hangar we can't afford to maintain.
Okay.
So yeah, I know we're not voting today, but I would really like to see that number bigger.
Increase it? Okay. And there is room to do that based on
Yes.
our revenue versus our expenses on the operating. So there is that flexibility with that. Yeah. And that's why we have the workshop to kind of discuss the things versus.
No, yep. I mean, this is why we're here. Yeah.
Why, so salaries and benefits went up like 20%?
So that was with anticipation of adding 4 different staff members.
Okay.
That's adding a new staff member for Jason. He doesn't have anyone to assist him with anything or be a backup. And it would be 2 maintenance staff as well, just to kind of help with the maintenance of the airport, and 1 security officer. So that's adding the 4 additional employees and also with the increases.
Cost of living.
Yep, and that's what, so I was going to suggest a 5% COLA. I did pull up, let's see where I'm at. This is Los Angeles, the CPI for it, the annual just from 20 to 21 was 3.8 8.8%. And then just for the last 3 months of this year, it's ranging from 7 to 8%. So I was going to suggest a 5% COLA for staff.
Is 5 high enough? I know this year's been pretty insane.
Yeah. So we were going to suggest the 5% and then also merit raises for some employees as well to kind of accommodate for some of the increases. Yeah.
When does LA County come to? LA County's going to be based on that.
We do actually both. We do LA County and Kern County now. Any new leases that are coming up, we're basing it off Kern County. Actually, Kern County has been higher than LA County. So just for instance, March was 8.6%.
Inflation.
And then 8.5% for LA County. Yeah. So that's what it was a surprise when we started basing everything off Kern County, that actually Kern County is higher than LA
Kern's
County.
catching up.
So
I'm wondering if we should have more budget than 5%.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I know it sounds painful, but we're just passing
Yeah.
the pain on to them if we don't.
Because it is an estimate. Right.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
And
Yeah.
right now, all the signs point to crazy inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just housing and fuel costs.
I think the
You
fuel. Okay. I'll review that as well.
Okay.
Supplies, taking that down from our mid-year budget, just based on there's some things that we purchased last year that I don't feel that we'll be buying this year. Licensing and software staying the same. We haven't really added any new software licensing.
Do those radar cameras take license fee?
I don't believe so. Yeah, that'd be a Jason. And he is the licensing and software budget. That is Jason. Like he's the only one that provides any data for that. So, communications is anything from our fiber to cell phones to tower communications that we pay. Training and travel did increase that just because we did bring it way down because of COVID. That staff may start to travel and training. Permits and fees, no changes in that. We did talk briefly about repairs and maintenance.
Yeah,
So
could you expand upon that at all?
the repairs and maintenance.
That was the previous tab that we went over? Not really. That was
Not really,
budgets.
no. Repairs and maintenance is anything from vehicle maintenance to building maintenance.
Does it include labor contracts? Like I see you have engineering services broken out.
So engineering services would be
They're specifically to like engineering, some
Like
meet and hunt,
engineering drawings.
Yeah. Kinley Horn, stuff that we did for our GIS. The mishap plan we recently did was included in that, in the engineering. So yeah.
Right.
Jump off scale for a minute because I missed the first bit. Did we ever talk about our water system?
That was like,
Yeah.
I figured it was.
that was the very first thing.
I'm sorry. I saw that up there.
Yep.
So what's operating services?
Operating services, so that one I increased. We have Todd's been talking about increasing the fire department to 24/7. So that's what the increase is in that. So that would be our fire department. Any
Does that
outs?
include tower?
No, because towers are employees. So tower falls under the salaries and benefits.
But it would fall under that if we got a FAA tower? Is that how that
it
works?
wouldn't.
We would
Yes, it
still
would
be
be
paying
budgeted
the
there.
salary of the FAA
Right.
Right.
bargain.
So that's, like I said, the increase on that was just due to the idea of going 24/7 for the fire department. Bad debts, as of this year, we don't have any, so I'm just leaving it the same at 30,000 just in case we have somebody who gets into that situation next year. Dues,
Congratulations.
yeah. I guess the year's not over, but it's like,
Well, at what point does it become bad debt? Because I know we had a couple of over 90-day. It may not have been significant enough. But
then they ended up paying it down.
they did.
Yeah,
Okay.
we haven't had to write off anyone's account this year.
That's amazing. In this economy.
Yeah. We scare them that they're going on the over 90-day to the board.
The name and shame is
Yes,
subscription.
Dues and subscription, no changes in that. The insurance, I did increase it just due to, I think every policy we got this year increased a little bit.
How much of that is liability versus, you know?
I think our liability plan is like 80 to 90,000 a year.
Out of the 350?
Yeah, it's the bulk of the policy. Because we also have our auto, tower insurance.
Our roof's blowing off policy.
Let me tell you, yes. I'm afraid to go and ask what has happened today.
We may have to
All this.
re-budget after
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Marketing, I did leave it the same as last year. Last year, we added monies into it, just with the name change and things changing, so I left it at that. Because as you can see, this year, we've only spent $44,000. So I'm going to leave it at $80,000 with the mindset of us. We are, as I showed you, I did do the new logo, so we'll start to identify signs to change out with the new logo. Mm-hmm. Rent expense we did increase that this year to add a Jet A fuel truck because we lease them. They're on lease from AdFuel, so we plan on getting one more Jet A. Utilities, as we're talking about inflation.
Yeah, rent expense.
Yeah, that's any of the rent that we pay for fuel leasing our trucks. The Xerox postage machine. The bulk of it is really our fuel trucks that we lease.
Okay.
Yeah, AdFuel owns the trucks.
It's not tenant rent related. It's things we lease.
Yeah, it's things we lease. Yeah. Tenant retention, I did keep it the same, just with all the unknown. This is actually the fitness center, but as you can see, this year we're only at 21,000. So it's kind of just going on the side of caution, just with since we're not completely out of COVID, in case that ends up changing again. But
hopefully our advertising signs will bring that down.
We're trying, yes, and that's why I've seen the banners. We've tried to buy some small things, but
what's our revenue on the fitness center?
Wait, no. We've spent 21.
Well, no, revenue versus expense, though. This might be net.
Okay. Because I know that number's.
And this is too, does include a few months too that we're in the COVID, and it took them. I mean, they are right now. The last 3 months they've generated more revenue than the expenses. So we're hoping that's we're hoping that's the new trend for the fitness center. Depreciation, just increase that because as we add fixed assets, we have additional depreciation. And then the expense reimbursements, change that. The 128 left at the same. This is when we get monies back. If our fire department goes to, they work after hours or we rent out any equipment, this is the monies that we receive back for that use of the equipment or fire department.
So something that maybe we haven't had a category for under operating expense in the past that maybe we want to put a category in for budgeting is air show, air racing, things like that. I'm not sure what that would be called, but maybe there's already a category, but
yes,
if it's a commitment we want to make, not necessarily makes revenue the first year or so, it's going to be an expense, and we should have that budgeted.
It'd be nice to have a category.
Yeah.
It could be a big one initially.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Property tax increased it a little bit. Seems like this year we kind of underestimated last year just with COVID, but it seems like everything is still going as planned.
Is that okay? So it says we spent $729,000.
We actually received $730,000 in property tax.
We don't pay property tax.
Yeah.
That's what you're collecting from the leasers.
Exactly. Yeah, they pay the county, and then the county pays us. Well, they pay us monthly, but really they pay twice a year. We get a big payment usually in December and April. So we received our big payment in April.
It's under non-operating revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
That number's gone up. I remember.
If I just read it, then I wouldn't have question.
Yeah.
Oh.
Interest income. As you know, interest rates are slowly going up, so that we might see an tick up in that. The FAA projects, just working actually on fine-tuning those. I'll have those before we go into the next, when we actually have the budget. Todd has just received what the FAA had granted us for 1230 this year. But looking at it, it looks like if the completion of the project, it should be $511,000 would be our portion
Your cursor, please.
of the project right here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, we should, based on the initial funds that they've told me. So we are budgeting for the $511,000 next year. But based on where we're at with the project, I don't foresee us being done by June of 2023 with 1230. So
It's worth trying.
I would rather budget for it, and then it might magically happen.
I see this being done. I don't see the billing being done.
Right. And these reserve designations, these are all.
Sorry, could you go back to so the difference between the 800K grant and the 2.3 million expense, some of that is unrecaptured grant money?
Yeah, because we'll get some
just
of
won't come in that
in that year. Yeah. But let me bring it down here. I have it a little bit more broke down for the FAA projects on Taxiway Charlie. We're still wrapping that up, so we probably, I'm assuming, fall that should be done. And then the runway 1230, anticipating 11.7 million, and then we'll get 11.2 back from FAA. And that's over for the course of the project.
Right.
You ever throw in the Caltrans reimbursement in that number?
I have not typically, well, it's right now it's only $10,000.
Okay.
And we have to purchase like airfield. It has to be something related to the airfield for that 10,000. So typically something comes up for it, whether it's airfield signs or lighting or something. So we get reimbursed once we purchase that.
In my mind, it's 5%. So.
Oh,
Yeah,
for that.
you're
Oh, yes.
talking
Oh, yeah. The
about
5%, the
FAA
matching.
grants.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's in that number?
That's factoring it when we did not receive it. I try to assume that we're not going to get it because there's no guarantees we'll get it.
What we usually do?
What
Yeah.
we should do.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Because it's all based on it's California. It's
No,
all based on
I get it. But it's a real number. I mean, it's-
Yeah, we could potentially get 5% of that 500,000 as well. Yeah. So just kind of going overall, just kind of where we're at with it, based on if we went forward with everything on here, but obviously I'm going to increase the repairs and maintenance. I'm anticipating our bank balance to be 9.1 million in July, starting in July. And based on the budget of the two FAA projects that potentially expenses, and then the capital projects that we went through at the beginning of it. So this is anticipating as if every project went as we anticipated, and revenue and expenses that we have $5.6 million left in the bank, which 6 months is 5.4. So we're still operating and having 6 months of reserves in the bank.
On this one here, you might change that 503 to the 511.
Okay, that's the one I fixed it when I went back to my office.
Oh.
Yep.
I can't see.
I just printed. I think I printed that before you gave me the 511. Yeah. So I kind of this is my own, like I have lots of different working numbers for myself. The operating expense without depreciation is 8.2. So daily cost to run the airport is 22,000. So we have 248 days in the reserves if we don't factor in depreciation. So that's all I have. If you guys have any further questions?
Doesn't look like it.
No, thanks.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Very good.
Big guess.
That's what I'm saying, right?
No, it's
With what's available to us, that's where my projection is, and obviously throughout the year it could be changed.
Yeah, it's definitely going to change.
Yeah, of course.
If our circumstances change throughout the year, then we can make those adjustments.
Well, if nobody has any other questions or any other points of discussion that need to happen for this meeting, then I think we're ready to adjourn. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Here's what I said. It's not very good.